Right, so we're back, and I'm using my Galeri Swallowtail airbrush. I think it's the 3mm needle that's in it, or 0.3mm needle, and I'm just priming with Tamiya's XF63 German grey. It's a nice dark grey colour. That'll be a good base colour to unify all the photo etch and resin. So you're going to be coming in from all the angles and laying down a nice even coat. So the main thing is to get all the photo etch and resin with an even layer on to unify everything. Making sure you come in from all the angles so you don't leave any parts unpainted. And we also want to paint the sort of these internal areas here, because you can possibly see a hint of colour through these windows. Right, little top up of paint. So I'm going to come in, this one's easy enough, we'll actually hold it by the aerial and just that's it. Now I did come in and give the, you'll see the microfiber cloth here, give everything a wipe down to make sure we got all the dust and sand and particles away. It might actually be easier if we just pop the steering yoke off and paint that separately. So this is the one where we're going to need to paint all angles we can. So starting from underneath. And with a drop of paint on, this is the first opportunity we're going to get to see the real detail on these resin seats we put in. Change angle. And we'll need to do the back as well. Right, and then obviously we've got this piece here and that bit, but I'll do them off camera because I think you've seen enough of me painting. So I'll be back in a moment once everything's finished. Okay, back, and we have primed the interior. Now, how do we make this interesting? Well, we want to do a bit of color modulation. A lot of it you're not going to see, so these central areas here, there's no point. Just a big green base coat will be fine. For that, we'll be using Tamiya's XF71 cockpit green. It's quite a good color. A little bit light, but we can darken that down with filters and whatnot. But to add contrast to it, I'm going to use some XF4 yellow green or chromate green, which was a primer color used by the Americans in the production of their aircraft. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to highlight the centers of panels. So with a 0.2mm needle airbrush, so it's very fine. This is the Galeri Mobius. Fantastic detail brush. We want to paint the middles of the panels. And this will do two things. It will help give us some tonal variation when we lay down the top color of the XF71. But because we're concentrating on the centers of panels, it will help force the shadow into the recesses where the ribbon is. And what we can also do, or what I will do when we come back, after putting the top coat of XF71 down, is we'll come back with a dry brush with the XF4, and then we'll dry brush to pick out or highlight all the high spots that are not getting highlighted at the moment. So as like a three-part system, we should be able to get a bit of interest into the interior of the model, because it is a big model, and certainly in the waist gunner positions we are going to be very visible. It's going to be very, very visible to anyone viewing it. So I do need to make an effort to try and give some tonal variation to bring life to the model. You can start to see that it's coming to life. It looks like a bit of a patchwork quilt at the moment, but yeah, it's coming up. Now, I'll be coming in with some metal colours and a sponge here, I think, or a Prismacolor pencil anyway, because these will be high traffic areas for when the waist gunners were operational. And this paint will have been scuffed up. Just highlight and bleed that down just to force the shadow. Same on this side. Highlight the rolled plastic there where the sunlight would have caught it, and then fade it down, so you get a forced shadow on the piece. Now these pieces here I believe are stainless steel, so we don't need to paint them green. I think there's still a toilet can to go on there. I need to check the instructions for that. Possibly not. Let me just check. Doesn't matter because it's probably a galvanized bucket if it is, so it'll be painted silver. Okay, a little touch of highlight in there, and there, around the edges there, and that's probably enough for that. So that's that piece done. I'm not worried about highlighting that just too much because we can do some dry brushing. This one's a little trickier. I think you hopefully can see. There you go, you can see the level of detail those seats bring out now we've got a paint on them. Really, really nice. Definitely an improvement from the kit parts, especially the fact they were such a lovely fit. So we want to highlight these flat panels here. And realistically, a lot of this cockpit you're not going to see. Once you get the glazing on, it's all going to be hidden away. So what we could do is just a general straight down highlight over the top, picking out all the high spots. You should be able to see that. So we're going to pick out all the high notes, top edges of reinforcement, and we are just really gently putting this paint down. We're not putting lots down. I say a lot of this isn't going to be seen. But it'll help set the colour for the cockpit green. So there we go. Right, sidewalls now. I'll just do one because I'll just be repeating the process on the other side. So in the back here, we know this piece here won't be seen. If we put the not enough hands here, so if we pop this in just to see, so you can see that the rear floor here isn't seen below the gun platforms. So we need to focus, this is going to get a coat of green. We really need to focus our highlights here where it is not going to be covered and it is going to be seen. So, same thing, just look where the light's going to be for a nice random pattern. You want to highlight that edge there because that will catch the light. And a little bit around the top of the windscreen. There is a piece of photo etch to go on the roof here, so that will also cover a bit. Okay, so there's the first base coat for that. Now in the front, where we've got the side consoles, well, first of all, we've got these areas here, so we can do the same here and highlight the centers. And up here, just thinking where the light will be coming down through the tunnel, the front gun emplacement, gun turret even. So nice bright centers in there, bit of light, and as you look down through the cockpit, you may see some of that floor, so you'll see that contrast. Definitely in here. Not as bright maybe, the cockpit's covering it, but just to show that there's something different going on there. And then when we come to the sidewall, what we want to do is just pick out the center of the panels, and this is where we need to be a little bit more precise. Now if you use lacquer paints, this is easy because you'll get better flow than acrylics, and you can use a slightly lower pressure. However, I am a Tamiya acrylic guy, so I just have to use what I've got. But it doesn't take long to do. And that's it. And when we come back to do a dry brushing, we will dry brush this colour over the cockpit green, which will pick out all the rib detail, and the rib detail that's moulded into the plastic. Right, so I will go away, I'll finish priming up the other side of the fuselage, and then I'll lay down the first colour of green and come back and look at it as I do some of that, but I'll do most of it off camera for speed. And then we can think about letting it dry up before we come back in and do some dry brushing. So, see you shortly. I think like most modelers, my modeling patch shrinks the more I make. So, let's move those instructions out of the way, so we can get a bit more clear space to paint. So I've got cockpit, rear bulkhead, waist gunners, and the fuselage shafts. Right, so Tamiya XF 71, thinned roughly 50-50. We can practice putting the layer down in there. There we go, so just a suggestion of colour in there. That's all you're needing, because that's not going to be seen, you're just going to see a bit of colour through the glass. That's about all you're going to see. So, same here. And up in the center wing mounting pylon. Now, you'll see as we lay it down over the front there, we're getting the shading, but you're getting that pre-shading coming through really rather nicely. So, we'll lay second coat down, nice steady, thin layers. And when it looks a little starker on the camera than it does in real life, but when you start to see that pre-shading fading away, stop. And that's probably as far as we need to go. Because it's the inside of a fuselage, you do need some contrast. By the time you get the cockpit in there, we've put a wash and done some dry brushing, all that detail will be obscured. So you need a bit of contrast just to keep the cockpit alive and keep the interest in it. Same goes for this area here. There we go, just a merest of colour going down, but we'll still keep retaining that pre-shading to give you the visual interest inside. So same on this side here. I'll do this later, but we'll just focus on the detailed areas. So spraying the floor first. That's it. As the paint dries, that pre-shading should come back through nicely. It's the same one here. we go. So once we're happy with that, we'll move on to the next part. Now we do need to spray the inside. Again, that is just for the block colour. And you can see there, Tamiya paints thin 50/50, spray beautifully. Lovely smooth finish, especially through this airbrush. Can't fault the Galeri products, they're really, really good. I'll leave that dry so I've got something to grip. I'll go and paint this piece. This piece you should actually see it quite nicely. So just light dusty coats. Okay, still quite stark. Second dusty coat. Perfect. Now watch that piece as it dries. The pre-shading should start to show back through. So coming in at all angles to make sure we don't leave any areas unpainted. And being quite sparing with the paint here because we really do want to retain that. Well, we've run out. We really do want to retain the pre-shade and come through because we want that contrast and highlight, because that's an area that's really going to be seen. So reloaded the airbrush. Try not to spill it everywhere, which I nearly did. So I've just misted that coat on. Really letting the airbrush do the work for us. So the compressor's probably running at about no more than 20 psi, 15-20 psi. We've got a lovely, well mixed paint. And we've got that paint ratio mixed at 50/50 with thinnest to paint. So there we go, that's fine, let's leave it at that. And by the time we start doing detail paint on these parts, it's really going to make it pop. So again, we're just going to mist it in. Bearing in mind to get the sides of the chair frames, because they were aluminium. Get the walkway, get the bulkhead. We've got the bombardier aimer's position. Underneath, but yes, you're not going to see it. However, you don't want to take the chance of any grey being shown through, because that really will detract from all the other hard work we're putting into this. And then on the rear side here, block colour. There we go. Get myself, paint this one up. Now, it doesn't matter if there's quite a strong colour on this, because it will add to the contrast. And this is quite a focal point within the cockpit, so we'll give it a full covering of paint, all angles. So we've got a nice, solid, heavy, opaque colour on it. There is parts on this that are painted black as the switches, and that will instantly add to the contrast. And if I remember right, the steering yokes are painted red, so that's high contrast. Right, we'll finish off in the centre here, block the colour in, out of paint, there we go. Right, so next job is to dry brush back with the XF4, and then we're going to look at start detail painting all these extras that we've put in to really start bringing this cockpit to life before we put a wash on it and make it absolutely pop. So I'll finish painting this fuselage half here, and then we'll come back to do some dry brushing.